Hello, I'm Mark Lund, the writer and director of the science fiction film First Signal. And I'd like to welcome you to the American Heritage Museum in Hudson, Massachusetts, where today I interview one of the stars of the film, Paul Noonan, who plays General John Rieger. Paul, and welcome, and thank you for being part of First Signal.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate being here. It's beautiful.
Isn't it a wonderful facility?
Yeah, it really
Isn't
is.
Great? I mean, all our tanks here and there, and
Yeah.
all the exhibits. Let me ask you, when you first read the script for First Signal, how did you prepare for the role of General John Rieger? Did you look at any real life people, real life military officers, or perhaps some older films and television shows?
Yeah, pretty much all of the above. So growing up, my dad was in the Air Force National Guard.
Oh.
Down at Otis Air Force Base on the Cape.
Okay.
And he retired a lieutenant colonel. And so growing up, I spent a lot of my time down at Otis with him, with his military friends, and watching the fighter jets fly, and just kind of hanging out down there and taking it all in.
Wow.
But what I was also able to do was kind of see how the military operated to a degree from my father's standpoint. So that was a big piece, because I would see him in a uniform very similar to the one that General Rieger wore all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, and we look very similar. But so that combined with the research I did, what I first did was I went onto YouTube and I literally just searched for 4-star Air Force generals, 4-star generals, whether it was movie clips or whether it was, say, a clip in front of Congress, or just the way that they carried themselves, the way that they addressed people, because typically they're polarizing figures. You know, they didn't become a 4-star general by not being that kind of a leader. So A Few Good Men stands out. That court scene I watched many, many times because I kind of felt that Rieger and Cedric had a back and forth very similar to that, and I think you and I might have talked about that.
Yes, I think we did actually, yeah.
Yeah, so that combined with all of the other clips that I found really showed me a lot. And it helped me to prepare in terms of how General Rieger would carry himself, especially in front of the president.
Right.
So.
What did you find was the most challenging aspect in playing General Rieger? Were there any particular challenging areas or things that you found challenging as an actor, or just maybe within the character itself?
Absolutely, all of the above. In terms of preparation for me to walk on set and be very confident, I super prepare.
Which was obvious.
Thank you. Yeah. But so that's a big part of it. But it was also a challenge, and it always is. Because the way that I try to approach it is I want to make the character my own, but I also want to do it justice. And when we're talking about a feature film, and I know how important it is not only to you, but to all involved, and we all have a stake in it, all of us.
Absolutely.
So for me, I went into it knowing the responsibility I had to bring that character to life. And where it was a 4-star general in the military, I wanted to do it justice, you know, and I hope that I did.
You did.
But to go back to the preparation piece, that's all, and I'm sure you can relate, it's always a challenging part or piece of the whole puzzle is to walk onto set fully prepared. Because from that point on, there's a whole slew of other things that can happen.
Exactly.
You know, so if you're prepared, you're ready for anything.
What was your favorite part of the story? Was there a particular part when you came into it with your character where you were really looking forward to playing it?
Yes.
And then let's talk about a part that was particularly challenging where you're like, boy, I need to get through this.
And they might be the same thing.
Sure, they could be.
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the whole process, because where we filmed over a couple to a few months.
Yep.
To see it all come together the other night, it was fantastic, because it being a part of that and having these scenes that we were really looking forward to, and you know, at the end of the day, we feel really good about it. When you see it all come together, it's a pretty amazing thing. So that being said, the one scene that really stands out to me was where General Rieger and Cedric are going back and forth.
Yeah, that
and
was
they're
in a
they're
scene.
they're
Yeah.
physically going back and forth on opposite sides of the table. But where Rieger has this objective of getting Operation Troy signed, and he sees Cedric standing in his way to a degree, it gets pretty heated.
Yeah.
And that was fun to play.
And you really were very passionate about it when you did it. I mean, as someone just watching it in the audience the other night,
Yeah.
I got so lost in the fact that, from directing it or writing it, but you actually, you made everyone believe it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think everybody did.
Oh, yes.
You know, and so that's the thing with Connor Timmis, who played Cedric Yona. He and I being the two, Rieger and Cedric going back and forth. He is a scene partner. He was fantastic. I really loved his performance.
You both worked really well together.
But he was great to play off of as well.
Yeah.
Because the back and forth between them, I think, was pivotal too.
Yes.
Especially with the sit down, because at that point, Rieger was really exerting his command.
And if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you improvised that, I think, didn't you? Didn't you do, or we did that at the table, or it came up somewhere, because it wasn't in my original script, I remember.
I think that it came up after the table read.
Yes.
Potentially,
yes.
but
Yeah.
there were things, there were parts of that were
Yeah.
improv, and the banging on the table and the
brilliant.
pointing
Yeah.
and the but that's a beautiful thing about something like this and going into it prepared is when things like that happen, it's amazing what can come of it from an actor's standpoint.
Was there anything that surprised you as an actor, or just in general, when you were playing this character? You've been acting for many, many years, and you've acted in a variety of different parts and scenarios and what have you. Was there anything particularly that surprised you when playing this part?
Well, so this was my first lead in a feature film.
Okay.
I've done a good amount of short films and been involved in other feature films, but not to this degree.
Okay.
And so, where there was so much dialogue and a lot of information within that, that's real information.
Oh, it's data, for sure.
It's data. So you got to get it right.
Yep.
But not only that, again, as an actor, you can't get lost in your lines. It's not about the lines, really. It's with film and television, it's a lot more. The camera sees everything. So with that, delivering those lines, but also the action that was involved in the whole film, being, when we went to get a cup of coffee and we were whispering and having that conversation, or when we're walking back and forth, or the things on the projector, with the real data, the 17,000 miles per hour and all of the debris in space, that was a challenging thing to really to make believable.
Well, and what I wanted to do as a director, because it's hard when you're just playing off green screen and the image isn't there and you have to talk about it.
Right.
So that's one thing that Dan Groom, the director of photography, and I talked about. Well, can we put this in camera, special effect? And I think, in just my view, it makes the actors relate better overall to it rather than pretending to look at something that just isn't there.
Acting's a big part of the imagination, but I think we're taking it a step further when you have to look at a green screen or a blank screen.
Yeah.
Especially when maybe it's a moving object. When I looked up for the fighter jets.
Yes, because they weren't there.
But we knew that they were going to go that way.
Exactly.
So, it was
Just
literally
perfectly.
kind of a look up and go that way.
Yeah.
But that's where the imagination comes in.
Well, I think it also comes down to what you said earlier. It's like preparing for the part,
Yeah.
which you and the other actors took so seriously, which just made it a godsend as a director and for the crew. Because when we got into the building, I'm not sure if I told this to you, this story that I learned the first day of shooting that we had to shoot within a 9-to-5 schedule.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
That added some days.
Yes.
But the beautiful thing is I felt that we were very productive and
Yes.
efficient.
Yeah.
It felt like we accomplished, for the most part, what we set out to accomplish on that given day.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So it was a well-oiled machine.
Thank you. Well, it's a tribute to actors having their
Everyone.
lines memorized,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
The one thing I noticed with your character in particular, and I know I wrote the script, and it's one thing as a writer, you write a script and you have certain objectives you want to see happen, but it's another thing when an actor actually breathes life into a character.
Yeah.
And what I saw with General Rieger done so beautifully was when you're with the president in the bunker, Of course, you're being authoritative, commanding, deferential to the president to a point.
To a point.
But then when you got with Senator Hadrian, you were friendly, you were accommodating, welcoming, almost like you reported to him, sort of. When did you realize there was going to be a change there, and how did you get into that part of it? Because what was nice was you didn't see this robot, you as like in a character, like this military general who's just going to act like this. You showed a humanity to the side of it I think people could relate to.
Yeah, so where I think back to General Rieger's main objective of getting Operation Troy signed by the president, he had to comport himself in a particular manner to get that done. To your point, authoritative at times, but it's the president. When General Rieger walks into to Senator Hadrian's office, or the conference room, they are allies in Rieger's eyes at that point. I believe that he may feel that Senator Hadrian is the only ally he may have right now with the unanswered questions in his head. But when he walks in that door, he's got Operation Troy signed. So I think that General Rieger had a little bit of a sense of relief and satisfaction that he got that done. But then as soon as he and Hadrian started talking, they were looking at the footage, things started to get interesting because with their back and forth, they were trying to figure out, okay, now that we have all this information, we have Operation Troy signed in this briefcase, now what?
Yeah.
Major Sampson's off in this field, you know, a number of kilometers away. There's this radar, you know, field around.
There's blackout in this city.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure these things out as they're going on, which leads to that phone call. But I feel as though at that point it was more of just kind of, okay, a sense of relief. It's just he and General Rieger, and they're able to talk about next steps now. We have this sign, so now what?
Yeah,
and we know what that leads to.
Yeah, exactly. No, and you both built up to it beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah.